What's up, y'all? I'm your host, Stan Beckton, and you're listening to the NightStand, where we provide you with an intriguing social commentary on sports, entertainment, and more. We got an amazing show for you today, so stay tuned and listen up. What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the NightStand with Stan Beckton. That's me, yours truly. If you haven't heard of me, you'll be hearing of me soon. Be sure to follow the show on Instagram at the NightStand Show and to subscribe however you're listening today. Once again, we got another jam-packed episode for you, and we're going to start right off with the NBA playoffs.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
Last night, we had Game 7 of the Western Conference Series between the Los Angeles Clippers and the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets won Game 7. They beat the Los Angeles Clippers, a team with Kawhi Leonard, a team with Paul George. They got beat by the Denver Nuggets after having a 3-1 lead. After having a 3-1 lead, this Clippers team blew it. They lost to the Denver Nuggets. Let me give you a little bit of what happened in this series after they were up 3-1. Because I did tell you last episode that this series would go 7.
I told you.
In Game 5 and Game 6, the Los Angeles Clippers had a substantial lead and could not hold on it. They blew this series. They had chances to win in Game 5. They had chances to win in Game 6. And then when it came down to Game 7, they did not show up. The Los Angeles Clippers did not show up in Game 7. They did not show up. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George combined for 24 points. 24 points. They didn't do it in honor of Kobe Bryant either. This was not planned. Kawhi Leonard had 14 points. Paul George had 10 points. 0 points. 0 points in the fourth quarter from the two of them. These are the two max players on your team, the two best players on your team, the two highest paid players on your team. And they combined for 0 fourth quarter points. The Clippers didn't have a field goal until 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. No field goal. This is unacceptable when you have a Kawhi Leonard and a Paul George on your team. Kawhi Leonard, some people said he was the best player in the NBA this year. The best player in the NBA? But you have 0 fourth quarter points in the biggest game of the season? You blow a 3-1 lead? 0 points in the fourth quarter. Now, I told you last week that Paul George showing in Game 3, then I'm going to take it with a grain of salt because you can fool me one time, but you can't fool me twice. And Paul George did not fool me again because I told you I'm going to have to wait and see Paul George show me that he can show up in the playoffs more than once. No, he is not Playoff P. The nickname that I'm giving him is Way Off P. Way Off P. Hit the side of the backboard P. Paul George. What's good with you, bro? How are you going to say that you are a star player in the NBA and not only do you not show up on the offensive end, only 10 points in Game 7, but you fail to show up on the defensive end as well? You claim to be one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA, yet Jamal Murray has 40 points in Game 7. 40 points in Game 7. That doesn't add up. The math is not adding up for me, Paul George. What are you doing, Paul George? How, Paul George, do you play so badly in the playoffs? How do you play so badly in the playoffs? And no, Kawhi Leonard does not get slighted either for his effort on the defensive end. Neither does Patrick Beverley. Those are 3 players who claim to be some of the best defensive players on the perimeter in the NBA. Yet Jamal Murray has 40 points. And in the pick and roll, Nikola Jokic has a triple-double in Game 7. A team that was lauded as one of the better defensive teams in the NBA lets this happen, you know Jamal Murray is going to have the ball in his hands. You know they're going to run the pick and roll. You know it. But you allow 40 points and a triple dub from the two best players on the opposing team in a Game 7 after blowing a Game 5 and a Game 6 lead. Doesn't add up to me. Doesn't add up to me. And this was poor coaching on Doc Rivers' part as well. Because as much as they ran the pick and roll for you not to coach something up to stop that between those two players, very poor coaching, Doc Rivers. Very poor coaching. And the fact that your team did not come out in the fourth quarter of that game and did not come out ready to win this series in that fourth quarter reflects on your poor coaching, Doc Rivers. It also reflects on the poor leadership of their star player in Kawhi Leonard as well. Michael Jordan wouldn't let that happen. Kobe Bryant wouldn't let that happen. LeBron James wouldn't even let that happen. Even with his Dallas Mavericks days, he would not. LeBron James would not let that happen in the fourth quarter. No points until 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Come on now. But back to Doc Rivers. Back to you, Doc Rivers. This goes to show this 3-1 series blowing it lead goes to show that you are an overrated head coach. In fact, you are an Andrew Bynum knee injury away from being the most overrated head coach in NBA history. You do have a championship in 2008, but we all know Andrew Bynum plays in that series. It's looking slim for you, Doc Rivers. It's looking slim for you, Doc Rivers. Let me give you a couple of things. Doc Rivers became the first head coach to lose 3 straight 3-1 series leads. He lost in 2003 versus Detroit. He lost a 3-1 lead. He lost with the Clippers again in 2015 against Houston. And he lost once more yesterday. A 3-1 series lead. If you add the 3-2 series leads as well, it's even more. Doc Rivers has the most Game 7 losses of any head coach in NBA history with 8. Doc Rivers is overrated as a head coach. Yes, he has a championship. But did he have to really do much when you have playoff Rondo, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, all starving for an NBA title like they were? No, you do not. And he was carried by a Tom Thibodeau-led defense. Don't forget that. One of the best defensive coaches this game has ever seen was also on his staff. He also was on his staff. How many rings did Doc Rivers win without Tom Thibodeau on his staff? 0. Overrated head coach, Doc Rivers. Overrated head coach. And it is unacceptable that you blew another 3-1 lead. But back to the Nuggets to focus more on the positive side. Jamal Murray, 40-piece. Nikola Jokic, triple-double. This is their second time this NBA playoffs coming back from a 3-1 lead. They could move on to play the Los Angeles Lakers, featuring LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Now, they have been silencing doubters so far in this playoffs, but I think this is where that run comes to an end for the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets will have to stop a LeBron James. And who is guarding a LeBron James? Keep in mind that at times Kawhi Leonard did average 30 points in games in this series. And keep in mind that Donovan Mitchell did go off as well in the previous series. So, if they can't stop those two, I don't think they're stopping a LeBron James. Nor do I think they're stopping an Anthony Davis either. Rudy Gobert got buckets in that first series against the Jazz. So if Rudy Gobert can do that, imagine what Anthony Davis can do to a Nikola Jokic and Miles Plumlee and all those big men for the Denver Nuggets. I have the Lakers once again winning this series and advancing to the finals against the Denver Nuggets. How many games will I predict? Well, the series starts on Friday, and I'm going to predict that this series will go in 6 games. 6 games. As the Nuggets have been able to show you, they can get themselves a couple of wins in a series, especially when their backs are against the wall. However, I think when Game 6 comes around, that LeBron and AD will say, we are not letting this game get to a Game 7. They're going to take over and win this series. Lakers in 6, advancing to the NBA Finals in the bubble. Lakers in 6. There was another game yesterday as well in the NBA playoffs. There was another game as well in the NBA playoffs yesterday. You had the Heat versus the Boston Celtics. Miami Heat versus Boston Celtics. Game 1 came down to overtime once again. Now, heading into this overtime, you'll remember that the Heat's only playoff loss came in overtime to the Milwaukee Bucks. Their only playoff loss. So, what happened this time around when they got into overtime against the Celtics? Well, it was a tight game, tightly contested, came down to the final seconds of the game. In these final seconds of the game, Bam Adebayo had one of the best blocks some people have ever seen in their playoff watching lives. He blocked Jason Tatum as he cupped it to go to the rim for a dunk. And Bam Adebayo blocked that shot. But that was not the only surprising performance that came out of that game. I have to let you know right now that Tyler Hero, rookie Tyler Hero for the Miami Heat, is a future star in this NBA. He reminds me a lot of Devin Booker. I call him Baby Book. Baby Book. Both went to Kentucky. Both, if you look at Devin Booker's rookie year, have similar playing styles at this point. And Tyler Hero has shown you that he is willing to hit clutch shots. Willing to hit clutch shots. Look at the Bucks series. Tyler Hero, clutch shots. Look at yesterday. He only had 12 points, but look at the timeliness of those 12 points. Tyler Hero's 12 shots are all going to be timely shots in this series. Tyler Hero is a future star in this league, and him next to Jimmy Butler is a tandem that looks like it's a tandem that looks like it's going to dominate for the years to come. This tandem looks like it's going to dominate for the years to come. Jimmy Butler got buckets. He got 20 points once again. Timely baskets matter. He didn't get 30 piece, but he had 20, and he made sure to make the right basketball play. With shooters around him, you can't deny how important that is. The Heat won game one, but the Celtics did not disappoint either. The Celtics were led by Jason Tatum's 30 points. He once again showed that when the Eastern Conference Finals come, he's a baller. He's a baller in those pressure moments. You also had Kemba Walker, 19 points, Jaylen Brown, 17 points, and Marcus Smart, 26 points. Now, the Celtics are in trouble. After looking back at this game, the Celtics are in trouble. Why? Because you cannot rely on Marcus Smart to get 26 points to keep the game competitive. You cannot rely on Marcus Smart to do that. You can't. You can rely on him for the defense, but not to do that. The Celtics, you are in trouble heading into the rest of the series, already down 1-0. And like in the last series the Heat have been playing, I predict the Heat will win this series. I think this will be a longer series than the Heat are used to. And I think the Heat will win in 7 games. 7 games the Heat will win against the Celtics because the Celtics are going to have trouble with their bench scoring against a deep Miami Heat team that brings off the bench Andre Iguodala, that brings off the bench Tyler Hero, that brings off the bench Kendrick Nunn. Ballers. The Boston Celtics are going to be in trouble, and I think they're going to lose this series. Miami Heat in 7, only because I think the Celtics won't go like that early on, and I think they're going to give them some good bump, but Miami Heat is going to eventually pull away. Lakers Heat Finals, you heard it here first. Lakers Heat Finals. Elsewhere in the NBA news, you do have Mike D'Antoni out in the Rockets job, like I told you, could be a possibility last week. Mike D'Antoni has left the Houston Rockets. They are now looking for a coach to go with that James Harden, Russell Westbrook pair. They are looking into that coach. I gave you a list of candidates for all the coaching jobs in the NBA last week. Go back to last week's episode and listen to that. And think about who fits best with the Houston Rockets open coaching job. Last but not least, we cannot leave the basketball segment undone without talking about the WNBA. The WNBA playoffs started last night. You might have missed it. I know. It was horrible scheduling on the WNBA's part. Horrible scheduling. Terrible. You do not do that if you're the WNBA and you want the casual basketball fan to watch your games. You do not schedule the first round of your single elimination games on the same night as the opening round of the Eastern Conference Finals and Game 7 of another series in the NBA. You know everyone's going to be watching those and you're losing viewership. They made the poor decision again to schedule the second round of single elimination games on Thursday when there's Thursday Night Football. Hopefully, because it's the Cleveland Browns and Cincinnati Bengals, people aren't going to be paying that much attention to that Thursday night game and they can watch round 2 of the WNBA playoffs. But it's still in poor taste. The WNBA has to do everything to increase their viewership, especially in this bubble. Last night, in the playoffs, however, there was some great games. I told you last week the Mystics would make the playoffs. They did.
I told you.
And in the playoffs, they've had a great game. In the single elimination round, the Washington Mystics faced the Phoenix Mercury. This series, this game, came down to the last shot. It was a buzzer beater shot, and numerous people missed it because it was poor scheduling. The Mercury won on an 85-84 buzzer beater by Shea Petty. Skylar Diggins-Smith, a star, had a great pass. Cannot deny that great cross-court pass, and it was an even better shot. It was amazing. Go back and watch it, because I know you probably missed it. It's a shame you missed it. Also in the other round, the early game, you had the Connecticut Sun versus the Chicago Sky. The Sun won 94-81 after a strong third quarter and a strong showing from Alyssa Thomas with her 26 points, 13 rebounds, and UMD product Kalia Charles with 13 points off the bench. 13 points. Now that that's over, the first round is over. You go to the next round, single elimination, before getting into the semifinals and eventually the finals, which are a series of best of 5. My predictions moving forward for the WNBA playoff are as follows. I have in the second round the LA Sparks beating the Connecticut Sun, and I have the Phoenix Mercury beating the Minnesota Lynx. Why? Well, I'll start off with the Phoenix Mercury. The Phoenix Mercury will win because, 1, they already have playoff experience. They're already ready. 2, Sylvia Fowles has been out the whole season. The Minnesota Lynx do not have playoff experience on their team heading into this game. And I think that's going to come back to haunt them in the closing moments of this game against the Mercury. So the Mercury, I have the Mercury advancing. Next up, I have the LA Sparks beating the Connecticut Sun because the LA Sparks simply have too much talent. Too much talent compared to Connecticut Sun. Candace Parker, Agwumike, possible all-rookie candidate, Tia Cooper. So much talent on that Sparks team, I think it's going to overwhelm the Suns. They are the 3 seed for the reason. The Sparks are. I think they're going to win. So I have the Sparks and Phoenix Mercury advancing on Thursday night. Will it be another Stan Told You segment? I don't know. Stay tuned and find out. Watch the games. You don't want to see Bengals Browns. You don't want to see that. It's not going to be exciting. Baker Mayfield, come on. Joe Burrow, yeah, he's like that, but come on. Watch that WNBA game. Orange hoodie me. Come on now. We're going to take a break from all that basketball talk and give you a brief sports update of what happened this weekend. So I mentioned last week, U.S. Open occurred. The championship was Saturday and Sunday for that U.S. Open in tennis. Naomi Osaka got her second U.S. Open victory. Serena Williams was upset by Victoria Azarenka in that semifinal round. And Naomi Osaka pulled it out. Great showing by her, representing all the social justice causes with her mask and whatnot on the court. And Naomi Osaka, congratulations. On the men's side, you had Dominic Thiem. He won. Like I said before last week, Djokovic was suspended. So that made the path pretty easy for Thiem to win. Pretty easy for him. Pretty easy.
That's football, guys. That's all it is.
If you paid attention last week, you know that is our all-new sound for football. Is our sound for football. Last week, you had your first week of the NFL regular season. It's been a long time coming. First week done. Upset of the week. The Washington football team beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Upset of the week. The Eagles blew a 17-0 lead. That might be a theme of this episode. Blown leads. Maybe that'll be the title. Blown leads. 17-0 lead blown by the Philadelphia Eagles. If you watched that game, you would have saw that the Washington football team defensive line is full of straight dogs. They're full of straight dogs. Chase Young, number 2 overall pick in the draft. That's a dog. Jonathan Allen, another first-round pick. De'Aaron Payne, another first-round pick. Matt Ioannidis, most underrated defensive lineman in the NFL. Ryan Kerrigan, still getting it done at this age. And Montez Sweat, another first-round pick. Straight dogs on that Washington football team defensive line. Straight dogs on that defensive line. And they got after Carson Wentz in that deteriorated Eagles offensive line. Lane Johnson was out. Jason Peters just moved to left tackle like yesterday. So he was inexperienced in that system. Even though he played that position last year, he wasn't getting the reps at that left tackle position. He was at right guard. Brandon Brooks is out. That's why Peters was at right guard. So the Washington football team D-line took advantage of that. And they had 8 sacks on Carson Wentz. Forced turnovers. All you could hope for from a defensive line in the game. It all happened against the Eagles. So does this showing by the Washington football team mean that they can win the NFC East? Well, I wouldn't say they're going to win it yet, but I think they can compete for that NFC East title. They say defense wins championships. Defense also can win you a division title. When you have a pass rush and a run stopping that can get after the quarterback and stop the run like they did and like they showed against the Eagles, you can do a lot of things. You saw how the Pittsburgh Steelers got after the New York Giants. If the Steelers can get after the Giants offensive line like that, imagine what that 8-sack football team D-line can do against the Giants as well. So that's another 2 wins. They beat the Eagles or Cowboys one more time. That's 4 division wins. That's 4 division wins. 4 division wins can be a big difference. And they have an easy schedule given that they're coming off a 3-13 record last year. So, can the football team win the NFC East? They definitely can. Will I say they will yet? It's too early to tell. But just know that defensive line is going to be a problem all year long. Elsewhere in the NFL, Cam Newton had 2 rushing touchdowns on 15 carries with his reemergence as a New England Patriots quarterback. Great performance by Cam Newton. Great to see him coming back out and showing he still has it. He still has it. Cam Newton does. And you also had the Seattle Seahawks finally letting Russell Wilson ball. The Seattle Seahawks finally did it. Let Russ ball was a hashtag. They finally did it. They gave Russell Wilson 35 passes, and guess what he rewarded him with? 322 yards and 4 touchdowns. That leads me into one of my games to watch this week. That's Patriots versus Seahawks. Patriots versus Seahawks. You get to see Cam Newton, see if he can continue his success he had last week against a Seattle Seahawks team that's much better than that Miami Dolphins team. I'm going to keep it 100 with you. Seattle Seahawks is much better than that Dolphins team. So it'll be a litmus test for Cam Newton and the Patriots. And for Seattle, it'll get to see if Russell Wilson really can air it out against a talented J.C. Jackson, very underrated, and arguably the best cornerback in the league in Stephon Gilmore. Game to watch this week, Patriots Seahawks. Elsewhere in the NFL, you did have Saints versus the Bucks. The Saints beat the Tom Brady now led Bucks. And Tom Brady did struggle. He threw a pick 6. Everyone was saying all offseason, you take away those pick 6s, you take away those turnovers, the Buccaneers will probably win 11, 12 games. Well, they lost on Sunday. They lost on Sunday because Tom Brady threw a pick 6. They lost on Sunday because Tom Brady threw a pick six. Honestly, if I'm watching that game as a Bucs fan and I see Tom Brady throw a pick six, I'm like, we could have just kept Jameis for all of this. We could have. I'm not going to overreact and say that Tom Brady's struggle in week one are going to be reflective of the entire season. But after one game, it's a bad decision. I'll continue to update you as the season goes on, whether this was a right decision by the Bucs to get rid of Jameis Winston for old Tom Brady. I'll update you. But after one game, Tom Brady showed that he was struggling. He showed that he was struggling. Another theme of the NFL this past week was injuries. Let me give you a little brief rundown. Brief. I'm telling you, this is going to be brief. Believe me, this is not the full list of all the injuries that happened in the NFL. All right, here we go. You got George Kittle, Le'Veon Bell, Leighton Andervesh, A.J. Bouye, Marlon Mack, Blake Jarwin, Devontae Parker, David Njoku, Chris Godwin, Michael Thomas, James Conner, Phillip Lindsay. That's a brief list. That's a lot of big names on that brief list of injuries that happened week one in the NFL. Coronavirus shortened the offseason, so is this a cause for the injuries that picked up? It very well might be. It very well might be. Hopefully, this is the majority of all the injuries we'll see this season, because you never want to see a player get hurt after working so hard to achieve their dream. You never want to see that happen. Last but not least, I'm going to give you the rest of my games to watch this week. You have Falcons versus the Cowboys. That's a game to watch. The Falcons aired it out. They had 3 receivers all catch 12 passes. You might want to add all 3 of those to your fantasy team. Russell Gage. Keep that name in mind, Russell Gage. 12 targets. 12 targets last week from Matt Ryan. Versus the Dallas Cowboys coming off a loss to the Los Angeles Rams. Both teams are 0-1, and you never want to start off the season 0-2 because you got to win 2 more games to get to 500. You don't make the playoffs unless you're 500. And the Falcons and the Cowboys both have playoff aspirations. I would love to see the Cowboys go 0-2. That's just me because, you know, my favorite team, I told you in the first episode, that is now called the Washington Football Team. That is called the Washington Football Team now. So anytime the Cowboys lose, you know, I get a little bit of reveling in that. So I will say the Falcons will probably win simply because the Falcons will take advantage of that depleted Cowboys secondary now that they let go of Ha Clinton Dix, and they still have not signed Earl Thomas to replace him. I know they want to. They do. They just haven't done it. It doesn't make sense. Falcons going to beat the Cowboys. My last game of the week, Ravens versus Texans. You got to see the Texans play against the Kansas City Chiefs. They lost. But you got to see some good things from a David Johnson. You got to see a couple of struggles from a Deshaun Watson with this new offense and without DeAndre Hopkins. But they now get to go right up against another AFC powerhouse in the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson didn't really run the ball to win that game against the Browns. He threw the ball to win the game against the Browns, from the pocket especially. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for Lamar Jackson to stand back in that pocket against a J.J. Watt, against a Whitney Merciless. And I think the Texans are going to give him some fits in that passing game. I do. But I still think the Ravens are going to pull this one out only because Lamar Jackson is that dude. Lamar Jackson is that dude. Deshaun Watson is that dude too. He still is that dude. And I know I said the Texans are my Super Bowl pick a couple weeks ago. And I'm going to stand by that. I think you can come back from an 0-2 because all you got to do is make the playoffs, and I think the Texans will make the playoffs in that weak division. But I think this will be another rocky start for the Texans before they rebound and make the playoffs. So Ravens beating the Texans. Ravens beating the Texans. Last up, we got to go on to college football. The Big Ten announced today, a little bit before I started recording this, that they would be returning this season. So they just wasted all of our time, basically, by canceling and coming back. I'm just going to put that out there. Big Ten, you wasted my time. You did. But the Big Ten is returning October 23rd or 24th with 8 conference games, conference title December 19th, right before the college football playoff will decide their decision. And as a little bonus treat for teams to play, like a Maryland, like a Rutgers, Illinois, Indiana, teams at the bottom of their divisions respectively, they will get an extra game to play 9 games on that conference title date. They will get that extra game. There is no bye weeks. The Big Ten is trying to take precautions. They are doing 21 suspensions for any player who tests positive for coronavirus. And they are shutting down games if a team has a 5% positivity rate on their team. And they're starting daily testing. Last but not least, daily testing is starting September 30th. So the Big Ten is back. The Big Ten is back. Also back, college football, ACC. ACC came back last week. Georgia Tech beat FSU. FSU still struggled. I got some Florida State fans listening to this. Yeah, y'all in for a long one. Y'all defense performed well. Asante Samuel Jr., 2 picks. Marvin Wilson blocking kicks. That kind of rhyme right there. I'm not a rapper though. But Florida State, your offense, James Blackman, struggled. Mike Norvell supposed to come in, change that offense. But, didn't really work. Florida State might be in for a long one this year. Might be in for a long season this year. It had to hurt even more to see Georgia Tech quarterback Jeff Sims, a former FSU QB commit, win that game against you guys too. Had to hurt. Feel that deep in here, Florida State. Feel that deep in here. Feel that. Otherwhere in the ACC, Clemson once again showed that they were dominant in their first game. That was expected against Wake Forest, conference opponent, but not the same level. You got to be honest. They lost a lot of their offensive linemen. No. T-Law, he didn't even have a big day. And they still blew him out. Clemson is that good once again. They're that good once again. Yep. And there were a lot of upsets in the Big 12, though. Louisiana beat Iowa State. Arkansas State beat Kansas State. And Coastal Carolina beat Kansas. Yeah, Big 12. That's not good for your playoff hopes if the Big 10 is coming back and is going to be more competitive getting that playoff spot. Because with the Pac-12 out, the SEC is probably getting 2 teams. Clemson is going to be in there. So it's one more spot left. So if your conference strength of schedule is looking pretty bad due to those mid-tier losses, it's a bad start for you guys. You better hope Oklahoma goes undefeated. Oklahoma, you can't lose a game. You want to make that playoff this year. You can't. Big 12, too bad. That just showed you they're not that talented this year. But my game of the week, now it's time for my game of the week this week. My game of the week in college football heading into this week is number 17 Miami versus number 18 Louisville. Number 17 Miami is led by De'Aaron King, Houston transfer. He had a touchdown in the air, a touchdown on the ground, and did pretty well for his first outing as a Miami Hurricane. Louisville, on the other hand, they have a quarterback of their own kind of standing out. Michael Cunningham, 4 touchdowns versus Western Kentucky. Yes, it is Western Kentucky, but 4 touchdowns is 4 touchdowns. I don't care who you're playing. It'll be interesting to see if Michael Cunningham can continue that performance. Because if he can do that against Miami on a national televised stage, he can boost himself up there in that Heisman moment for that Heisman Trophy. Game of the week, 17 Miami versus 18 Louisville. That's my game of the week right there. Who's going to win? I got Louisville winning that game too. Couldn't give you the game of the week without telling you who's going to win. Go ahead, place your money. And when you win some, DM the show page on Instagram at the NightStand Show. And help us out, man. Come on. Because I'm giving you all this free advice, free money. I'm just saying, might as well help a brother out. I just want to thank you now for tuning in to another episode of The NightStand with Stan Becton. That's me, yours truly. Be sure to listen every Wednesday as we give you all that's going on in the sports world. Be sure to also follow the show on Instagram and to subscribe however you're listening today. Tune in next week, and just know, The NightStand is your favorite show.